The Emmy goes to
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad.
Bryan Cranston, Breaking Bad.
The idea hit me. This very boring, law-abiding guy who actually decided to cook meth.
Vince Gilligan would like to see you about this show called Breaking Bad. I said, no.
If you know Breaking Bad, well, you wouldn't without this man.
I was on a phone call in 2004 to Tom Schnauz, one of my oldest friends. He worked with me as a writer in The X-Files. We'd been out of work for 2 years, basically not knowing what to do. Figured maybe being a greeter at Walmart. He mentioned an article he had read in the New York Times in which some guy had put a meth lab in the back of an RV, much like some sort of a really demented ice cream truck. He said, why don't we get a Winnebago, put a meth lab in the back of it and ride around America and see the sights and cook meth, make some money. In the moment he made that joke, this eureka moment hit me because I'm a very boring, law-abiding guy, and he is too. And it dawned on me as that would be an interesting character to write about. Someone like us who, for whatever reason,
I have cancer.
actually did such a thing, actually decided to cook meth. I was going to take Mr. Chips, turn him into Scarface.
The last time you're gonna see a bad guy like this again.
Now all Gilligan had to do was find his Mr. Chips.
I was very fortunate to have worked with Bryan on an episode of The X-Files back in 1999. About a year and a half after the X-Files episode, this show goes on the air, and it's Malcolm in the Middle. And I see the commercial. I'm watching a commercial one night, and I see this goofy guy in his underpants and rollerblades and whatnot. And I said, this guy looks familiar. And he was clean-shaven. Bryan in our episode had a beard. And it took me a minute, and then I thought, oh my God, that's that guy. That's that guy from my episode. I didn't know he could be funny.
I did 7 years of Malcolm in the Middle, and it was great. And out of that, I had a couple offers to do a sweet, goofy dad on a sitcom right after that. And I thought, how could I do something different at this moment? It's so ingrained. I need to completely step away from that world. So easily said no to that. I got a notice. The writer of that X-Files episode, Vince Gilligan, would like to see you about this show called Breaking Bad. Do you remember him? I said, no.
Hard pass.
And it was so hard to cast because we had a lot of scary guys come in. I'm sitting there in the audition room like, oh man, this guy's scary. But you didn't really care for them. You were sort of looking forward to their demise.
I'm not going to go audition. And I said, just read it. Let me think about it. And I read it, and it was just incredible.
Then Bryan came in. I think it was the last day. We were in trouble because the train has to keep rolling. He was second or third from the last actor we were even going to possibly see. And I breathed such a sigh of relief when he came in.
When I first read the first page of the pilot script, it read just like you saw. Opened up on a beautiful setting. Trousers are falling from the sky. Inside, there's a middle-aged man only wearing tighty-whitey underwears and a respirator, driving madly. 2 dead bodies sliding up and back in a sea of fluid and glass. And I'm thinking, what the f*** is going on? That was page 1, and it took off from there. It was one of those rare moments when you respond to a piece of material so strongly that I knew I had to get in as fast as I could, because the longer I waited, I knew that every actor in Hollywood would want to be a part of this.
Now that Gilligan got his ideal lead, there was still one problem.
What I was worried about in the early days was that people would not engage with him.
He felt that audiences needed to sympathize with his character despite his actions, despite his ugliness. The studio and the network were saying, the silly guy from Malcolm in the Middle, you want as Walter White?
And so AMC wanted to reject Cranston. So Gilligan thought, I need them to see what I see.
When I sent along the DVD of that episode of The X-Files, she came around, and as did anyone else who might have had questions.
And now that Cranston was officially in, he did more to prove the network wrong than anyone could have imagined.
What I did is I patterned Walter White after my father, who was 30 years older than me. I felt that Walter White was older than his actual years. The way he carried himself, the way he was burdened by society, he felt like a much older man than he really was. So I thought, I think if I just take on the characteristics of my father, more rounded shoulders for an older man, a deeper voice. I wanted a mustache that you look at it and you go, either grow it out or shave it. I called it an impotent mustache. You thin it out so that you can see the skin underneath it. I wanted him to feel invisible to himself. And then when he transitions into becoming Heisenberg, his shoulders go back, his voice goes stronger and becomes more formidable to his enemies.
Say my name.
You're such a sweet presence. You're so amiable. But man, you have a scary face.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I always thought that even no emotion whatsoever, I have a scary face, period. So if, for instance, okay, if I'm looking at this camera, no emotion whatsoever, the thing that you read is fear.
Get off the toilet!
Yes, science!
Enter Walt's accomplice,
Oh my God. Pinkman?
The original plan, I thought of Jesse Pinkman being Walter White's entree into the world of criminality.
You know the business, and I know the chemistry.
Some stray like you with a giant stick up his ass, all of a sudden at age, 50? He's just gonna break bad?
When I got Breaking Bad, I was at the lowest point in my career. I just didn't know where my next check was gonna come in. I really had no money. I walk out and I'm just biting my nails. I had to have this happen.
My original idea was to kill off Jesse at the end of the first season. Once he had fulfilled that purpose, being Walter White's entree into the world of criminality,
You want to cook crystal meth?
there wasn't really anything more for him to accomplish.
I had no idea the initial plan that he was going to meet his demise towards the end of the first season. I mean, that was really your pitch to networks, right? They didn't let me know for 2 weeks. The reason why they took 2 weeks is because, honestly, no one wanted me other than Vince.
I knew by halfway through episode 1 that there was no way I was going to kill off this character.
Finally, he just said, listen, this is the guy I want. He made it happen.
But he turns into this multi-layered, complex, interesting, troubled, wonderful, beautiful character. He's the guy in the midst of the meth trade who actually is kind of a moral voice.
You can't keep getting away with this!
None of that would have happened if Aaron wasn't Aaron.
By season 1, Gilligan knew he had something. But given mediocre ratings, keeping the show on the air was far from a sure thing, as was finding a network to greenlight it in the first place.
There were not that many potential suitors for this show because it's obviously very edgy and dark and R-rated. So especially in 2005, 2006, there were fewer than there are now. Half as many, a third as many as there are now. We pitched to TNT. The 2 executives who I pitched it to were on the edge of their seat. They're loving it. It was the best single meeting I've ever had because these 2 people were they were such good listeners and they were into it as I'm telling about the first episode. And then he's in the RV and there's dead bodies. Oh my God, what happens next? And then they looked at each other when I finished. I get to the end and they say, oh God, I wish we could buy this. If we bought this, we'd be fired. It's meth. It can't be meth. It's reprehensible. Could the guy be a counterfeiter instead?
Not only was the show too dark, but Gilligan faced another problem.
Pitched this thing at HBO, the Sony and the TNT, FX. And I remember sitting there in their office and pitching it to them. And their eyes were glazing over. No one's ever going to buy this as a TV show. And the woman we're pitching to could not have been less interested. Just sitting there, just sort of like looking at her watch. This is not going to go well. And I get to the end of it and she's like, okay. Well, thank you for coming in.
The problem was TV networks preferred safe and proven formats, and what Breaking Bad was trying to do had never been done before.
TV shows exist in a kind of a stasis world. When you watch Bart Simpson for 30 years now on The Simpsons, he never grows up. He never becomes a different character than he is. All the great TV shows in history, it's helpful for the characters to not change because if they were to change, you don't have that comfort of inviting them into your room week upon week and not knowing what you're going to get. And you can make a lot of money by creating a show that goes 10, 12, 15 years. That's what most TV producers hope for. But Breaking Bad, from its very conception, was designed to be different, a bit experimental, to tell a story of change, of metamorphosis, taking the good guy, the protagonist, turning him into the bad guy, the antagonist.
As an actor, I'm all too familiar with the endless rejection of show business, even on regular projects, let alone trying to do something never been done before, like Gilligan. And even more cruel is even if you finally get the green light.
We pitched to FX, who wound up buying it.
Even then, nothing's guaranteed.
But the time when they ultimately bought the script, I wrote it for them. They thought about it for a while, and then they ultimately said, we are regretfully passing. Breaking Bad is dead. Most networks will say, we paid a pittance for the script. We're just going to leave it in a file cabinet somewhere.
Why would they buy it if they don't want to make it?
We're not going to risk the 1,000,000 to 1 chance that this script becomes a hit for someone else and make us look bad. That's the way most folks do business.
These people buy scripts they don't even want to make.
Because it's about control. The more they own, the more they control.
But in Hollywood, sometimes good things do happen.
The FX had passed, and God bless them, they were big enough. When AMC came calling, they were big enough to allow AMC to purchase the script for Breaking Bad.
I applaud AMC for having the balls to put a story like this on the air.
So proud, and I'm constantly impressed by how ballsy the network is and the company is, because the only time we ever got a note was on that episode. It was a call. It was, are you sure you want to do this? And, but they never said no. They just wanted to talk it through.
If you've seen the show, you know that beyond its brilliant writing, it has a one-of-a-kind aesthetic. Kind of feels like a movie, but the cinematography would have been impossible to do on the small budget the show had.
It was written originally, I have to admit, for Riverside, California. And the reason for that is I have a wonderful guy I used to work with on the X-Files, a guy named Frank Spotnitz, one of my fellow producers on the show. And Frank has a brother-in-law who is a DEA agent. About 5-6 years ago, he was stationed out in Riverside.
Why not California? It's where Gilligan lived. Easy choice. Well, the network had another idea to save money.
What about New Mexico instead? I said, why? And they said, because they have a 25% tax incentive, a 25% rebate. If you spend the money on folks who live in the state, or, if you spend your money in the state, they'll give you 1/4 of it back, which makes this show, it allows us to put so much more on the screen. So that was the reason, that was the impetus.
Ironically, the move to save money actually gave the show a premium aesthetic.
I love Sergio Leone movies, I love Westerns, I love John Ford, I love Akira Kurosawa, I love these wonderful, beautiful tableau shots. It worked out really well artistically because what we wound up doing felt very much, to my mind, like a Western, which it would not have felt that way in Riverside. So I'm very happy that it was Albuquerque. You can't point a camera anywhere in Southern California that hadn't been shot before. And you go to New Mexico and it's virgin. It feels that way.
Albuquerque has been a terrific character on Breaking Bad. New Mexico has created a sensibility and a look and a feel to it that has not been overused.
Part of what made the show great also posed a problem. Despite critical praise and Cranston winning Emmys, the show actually struggled for the first 3 seasons.
We're never a big hit in the U.S. We never had raw numbers in terms of viewership. People had not been able to catch up with Breaking Bad after their friends and family members had said, hey, this new show, you need to check it out.
Pick any episode of The Simpsons at random with no context, and you can watch it. Pick a movie and start watching halfway through, you can't. Same with Breaking Bad.
It would not have been able to catch up on this hyper-serialized show.
Ironically, what made the show great is what prevented people from seeing it. And it almost got canceled, except something massive was happening in TV that saved it.
You would have never heard of the show because it would have probably been canceled after season 2 or 3. I'm not even exaggerating, and we wouldn't be up here now talking about it.
Streaming platforms is what saved the show.
The availability of Breaking Bad on Netflix and all these various platforms, video on demand, are a great deal of that credit has to be given to this new technology.
Well done.
You look at the benefit that Netflix had on our show.
I remember binge watching the first 3 seasons on Netflix, which then added the 4th season. And by the time season 5 came out, everyone was watching. Ratings exploded, and the show became a cultural phenomenon. And if you're old like me, you know the pain and the beauty of having to wait an entire week for the next episode.
I appreciate the watching it as it appears version of television because it feels more of an event.
That was also a great thing, is you had to wait a week as opposed to now where it's just you could binge watch. It's like you take a great bottle of wine and you like shotgun it. I feel it was one of the last shows you could really enjoy that was like an experience.
And it was an experience. Every week, I'd get together with my buddy and watch, and it was like a mini Super Bowl. And I think that build-up added to the viewing experience and the lore of the final season, the third to last episode getting the only perfect IMDb rating ever. The satisfying ending. There's so many elements that made the show amass the audience and legacy that it has. But really, this video is my love letter to a piece of art that was almost dead before it started, and to the creatives who were bold enough to push cinematic boundaries.
Tell me why you're doing this.
Seriously.
I did it for me.
Basically not knowing what to do, figured maybe being a greeter at Walmart.
My name is Adam, this is Screen Puff, and I hope you enjoyed my first video. I created this channel because when I was a kid, I used to randomly watch whatever was playing or whatever was in theaters, but at 13, I discovered the IMDb Top 250 list and became obsessed with exceptional movies and TV. As an actor and musician myself, I just love art. I love the journey of the creative, taking a passion, an idea, putting it on screen, bringing joy and impact to people. I myself have been very affected by cinema, and if you're like me, it's probably shaped your life more than you know, and I want to help tell the stories behind what we love on screen. That being said, I don't pretend to know what I'm doing when it comes to putting these stories into a YouTube video, so I'm humbly listening to any of your feedback and comments. If you liked this and want to see more, consider giving that subscribe button the Joe Pesci treatment, and I'll see you in the next one.